Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the loss of TWA 800. I'm Jeffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say, joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Now, it must be, I think, noon in Frankfurt, Richard?
Yeah, just turned good afternoon
Ah,
here and good evening for you, probably.
it is indeed. Viewers, this is episode 284, which we are calling Trained Professional Eyewitness. And this comes from Scott Pugsley, who raises the issue. I question the idea of a trained professional eyewitness. That phrase suggests that the individuals have received specialist training in eyewitnessing and make their living eyewitnessing. I think that you are trying to say is these certain individuals are trained and employed in occupations that require keen observation and attention to detail. These are traits that can be found in people regardless of their occupation, and this distinction rules out consideration of many otherwise qualified observers. I don't know if this distinction among the witnesses would change anything, but I think you have created an artificial distinction that somewhat undermines your conclusion. Or perhaps such a distinction weakens the evidence of what should be a more robust agreement with the missile conclusion. Best wishes. Interesting observation there, Richard.
Yes, and thank you, Scott. And you're quite correct. We have pleaded for all 755 eyewitness statements to be released. The NTSB claim that 736 are usable. And we have selected a smaller number, and I'll give you the reasons why we have selected this smaller number. However, it doesn't change the conclusion, whether it's 10, 20, 30, or 736. I have a single engine pilot's license, a glider pilot's license, a yacht master license, and an international helmsman license. In all four training programs, we were taught how to observe what was going on around us all the time. We were taught how to keep watch by day and by night, in good weather and in bad weather. We were paying attention all the time, not just when we saw a flash of light or heard the sound some seconds later. We knew how to calculate the distance from the number of seconds between seeing a flash of light and hearing the associated sound. 5 seconds is around a mile, and 3 seconds is around a kilometer. We were taught how to plot the track of other aircraft or boats in the vicinity. We could work out whether we needed to take avoiding action. We were taught about weather and the height of cloud base and the height of cloud tops. Pilots and boat captains are trained observers. Situational awareness is built on disciplined observation. In aviation, this is codified as scan technique, see and avoid, traffic pattern awareness, instrument cross-check, energy management awareness. And at sea, it appears as continuous visual watch, the collision regulation compliance, the relative motion plotting, and dead reckoning and bearing drift detection. Observation is procedural, not optional. Observation is pattern recognition, and observation in both the aviation and the marine domains is predictive. Not only how is it at the moment, but how will it be in the near future? And that, in my view, is what makes pilots and boat captains expert eyewitnesses.
Mm. Yes, it's when you put it that way, Richard, it sort of is compelling, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that other witnesses out of the
Mm,
736 did not see what they observed. I'm just saying these people, pilots and boat captains, are trained to be constantly on the lookout.
indeed. So Barney R, Uniform 2 Delta, perhaps after this excellent production regarding the tragic loss of TWA Flight 800, perhaps the government will speak up one way or the other. I've always been curious what the actual military response was.
Yeah. And let's hope, Barney, that the government does speak up, if for no other reason, for the sake of the victims' families.
Mm,
And you would think after 30 years, it would be high time to
mm,
speak up.
indeed. Now, Raiders 33, sorry, Richard, NTSB TWA 800 aircraft accident report, page 251. According to the US Navy NAWC WD ballistics warhead testing expert, based on, this is in quotation, based on previous testing by the military and FAA, it is inconceivable that a warhead could have detonated in or near the fuselage without leaving evidence of high velocity fragmentation damage somewhere on the wreckage. The NAWC-WD report indicated that its experts observed no high velocity fragmentation damage on the accident airplane. The missile theory was debunked 30 years ago. I don't think so, but Richard.
Well, I'm perfectly familiar with the NTSB official report and the statement from the Navy missile expert. And I agree entirely with the statement made by the Navy missile expert. What I do not agree with is your statement that the missile theory was debunked 30 years ago. There are over 200 missile types which were available back in 1996. And the statement debunks only one category, namely missiles with a warhead that contains shrapnel, which is designed to go off in every direction and create the most damage. I never stated that this was a fragmentation warhead. In fact, I specifically stated this was not a book type missile as used against MH17, for example. I stated this was a proximity fused air blast warhead, specifically no shrapnel, no fragments. And rather than spread misinformation, I suggest you pay attention to exactly what we say. In any case, a Navy missile expert will defend the Navy, even if this was friendly fire. The US Navy shot down Iran Air 655 by accident, killing 290 people on board. This is not officially fully admitted, but the US government agreed to pay US dollars 131.8 million as an ex gratia compensation, and that included $61.8 million directly to the victims' families. The US legislation regarding death on the high seas was amended on the 5th of April 2000 as a result of the TWA 800 accident. And that was to allow victim families to seek government compensation. But as far as I am aware, there still has been no US government compensation paid to the TWA 800 victims' families.
Now, Blue Goose 03, the official conclusion of this investigation was an insult to the intelligence of everyone. However, it was a total insult to the military pilots who witnessed it. Very powerful comment, Richard.
Yeah, and I agree. Um, it is especially an insult to the TWA 800 victims' families when the US government can make an ex gratia payment to Iran Air 655 victims' families, but not to the TWA 800 victims' families.
Mm. At YouTuber EP5XX, they won't let us see the many eyewitness statements. There is a reason for that. But why? Why the cover up? Is it because the US military equipment fell into the wrong hands, was used to bring down the plane, is a bad look? Richard.
Yeah, interesting comment. And we need a full release, not only of the eyewitness statements, but in my view, all the secret documents on TWA 800. And pointed out yesterday, the US president can order that release. And in my view, we need full transparency. And the victims' families need to be able to receive compensation.
Now, Martin Trudeau, 6948, I appreciate Richard and Jeffrey's independent investigation and alternative points of view. They are seeking the truth to enlighten us with. Our government's conclusion about TWA 800, in my opinion, was a cover up. Thank you, Richard and Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, too. Um, the US Air Force, the US Navy, and the FAA have a joint surveillance system. I'm showing a screenshot of the radar coverage in the northeast of the USA. There are 14 radar stations on the northeast coast of the USA, each covering a range of up to 400 kilometers. That's 216 nautical miles. In addition, all major airports in the area have a terminal area radar. Typically covers a range up to 60 nautical miles from the airport. The NTSB examined 3 of the 14 long range radars and 5 of the short range airport radars. And I have so far only stated that it was a missile and reserved judgment whether it was a terrorism or a friendly fire missile. Personally, I actually believe the FBI and the CIA when they say this was not a terrorist act. When you consider the radar coverage of the US Joint Surveillance System, then it would be very difficult to pull off a terrorist attack with an aircraft or a boat. And when you also consider the submarine defense system, again, I doubt that a terrorist attack from short range off Long Island would be possible even with a submarine. But I cannot be certain, so I therefore reserve judgment on that one.
Mm. Now, Debbie Costo, 5397. Good morning, gents from chilly Washington, D.C. A couple of questions. Is it normal for a regular passenger plane to be used for training with explosives at any time during its flying career? And question two, if there have been other accounts of planes on the same route seeing missiles around the same time, does that sound like a routine? In other words, if it was the Navy in Area W105A testing missiles and the FAA never reported a problem, the Navy might have no way of knowing they were too close to the planes. Frankly, I think this W105A needs to be moved down and out at least 100 miles. This reminds me of the accident in January of this year when the Black Hawk crashed into a landing passenger plane at Reagan National. There have been numerous close calls, but no one ever thought to change the Army's testing flight paths until there was a fatal accident. and they couldn't cover this up because the Black Hawk went down with the plane. It was also caught on video. Interesting observation.
Yeah. The US Naval Station, Oceana, at Virginia Capes, controls the warning area W105 and the second area W106. And it issues NOTAMs, notice to airmen, um, when either area is closed to commercial aircraft. Now, TWA 800 was actually outside the W105 area, as we showed yesterday on our aeronautical chart. And it was outside by about 20 nautical miles at the point of the crash. And the area W105 actually passes within 10 nautical miles of the flight route Q430 at one point. 20 nautical miles is normally safe separation horizontally for aircraft between one aircraft and another, and 1,000 feet is normally safe separation vertically. It is, in my opinion, not sufficient separation for missile test firing with live warheads, as both Lufthansa and British Airways pilots have reported.
Mm. It seems ridiculously narrow margin there, Richard, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's too close for comfort.
Absolutely. Now, Don Allen, 6396, rather than use the oft used word cover up, let's just call it undisclosed evidence. You gentlemen have identified two scenarios to counter the official fuel tank explosion explanation. Theory 1 is a friendly fire event. Theory 2 is a terrorist missile attack. Both theories are totally reasonable and plausible. Both theories, if admitted, would have shaken the confidence of the public, and a response to a terrorist involvement could have provoked a military response. The fuel tank explanation is close to preposterous, but the general public brought the story. Richard.
Yeah, the general public did buy the story. But we will continue our independent investigation of the TWA 800 accident until we can come to a conclusion. Which of these theories is right?
We will indeed. And shortly, viewers, we're going to be talking with Captain Al Francis, ex Transworld Airways captain. And that's coming up. I think we've worked out it'll be this weekend. I'm not sure what day, but watch out for that. That'll be great. So, Richard, thank you very much indeed for answering these questions.
You're very welcome.
And viewers, please subscribe to us. Please like us. Please keep those wonderful comments coming and those great questions coming. And we're going to be back very soon to do an analysis on the news of the resumption of the search for MH370. And I'll be joined not only by Richard, but also Blaine Gibson. So that'll be coming up a number of hours after this particular episode is posted. So stay tuned to that. And of course, do subscribe to us, because with the search resuming for MH370, this is the channel you are absolutely going to want to be tuned into, because we've got all sorts of sources and intel on what is happening, and we'll be following it on an almost daily basis. So do tune in again later on for our analysis on the news of the MH370 search resumption. Thank you very much.